Hello, I'm Gerard Saylor of the LD Fargo Public Library in beautiful downtown Lake Mills, Wisconsin. And right now I'm deep in the pine woods of East Texas, here to read a story by Joe Lansdale of Nacogdoches, East Texas. This is Sunset and Sawdust from 2004. This is the first page and a half. On the afternoon it rained frogs, sun perch, and minnows. Sunset discovered she could take a beating as good as Three-Fingered Jack. Unlike Jack, who had taken his in the sunshine, she took hers in her own home at the tail end of a cyclone, the windows rattling, the roof lifting, the hardwood floor cold as stone. She was on her back, wearing only the top half of her dress, because the bottom half had been ripped away when Pete, during the process of beating her, had stepped on it, and the dress, rotten as politics, had torn and left her clothed only from waist to shoulders. It went through her mind that she was down to two dresses now, and that she hated to see this one go, as it, though faded, had a flowery pattern she liked, and the colors blended well with the stains. But this was a passing thought. She was mostly thinking, how can I stop him from hitting me? She was trying to do this by holding her hands up, and he was beating them down, and her own arms and hands flying back into her face or doing near the damage his fists might have. Finally, he hammered her to the floor, followed her down, spread her legs, went to tearing and clawing off the rest of her clothes. When the top of her dress ripped open and he jerked loose one side of her bra, revealing her, he said, "There's that titty." His speech was slurred and his breath seemed to bleed alcohol. He raked at her undergarments, tore them, and tossed them. When he snapped his gun belt free, he tossed it nearby, and while he was on her, tugging at his zipper, trying to put the mule in the barn, Sunset reached over and slipped his .38 from its holster, and without him being aware, put it to his head, gave him one in the temple. When she pulled the trigger, the shot was loud as Gabriel blowing her up to heaven, but it was Pete who went to heaven, or departed anyway. Sunset liked to think he got a nice chair in hell, right next to the oven. But in that moment, the shot made her scream, once, sharp and hard, as if she had taken the bullet, or as if she had just received a slap on the bottom at birth. Pete went limp, not only in the organ he had intended to use, but all over. He said not a word. No, ouch, oh shit, or can you believe that? Things he liked to say under normal circumstances, moments of surprise and duress. He just took the hot load, cut a fart near loud as the .38 shot, collapsed, and rode on out on Death's black horse. If it wasn't bad enough she had lost her dress, underclothes, and dignity, now all the windows on the east side shook like Marley's chains and exploded. The door leapt apart as if it had been anything other than a loosely connected puzzle, and the wind took the roof away. She lay there on her back, fragments of clothes fastened to her body, her old flat-heeled shoes still on her feet, a piece of window glass poking out of her shoulder, Pete lying heavy against her. She still had the gun in her hand. The shot had gone in small and hadn't come out big like she expected. It must have been a bad load, jumping around in his brain, making jelly of it. Blood ran from the wound, out of his nose and onto her. She rolled him off and looked at him. No mistaking, he wasn't going to recover from this. "Surprised you, didn't I?" Sunset said. She studied Pete for a long moment, then started to scream as if a banshee were inside of her. But it wasn't screaming you would have heard if you had been in the other room. It was loud enough, but the storm was louder. The house rocked, squeaked, squealed, and whined. Then, except for the floor, two ugly chairs, an iron cook stove, Sunset, and the dead man, it was all sucked up and thrown lickety-split on down country. Sunset, screaming, clung to the floor while the storm raved on. So we also have another book here, The Portable Lansdale, Sanctified and Chicken Fried, with a foreword by somebody named Bill Critter. And I like the foreword. It's pretty long. I'm going to read a short excerpt here put together that kind of succinctly describes Lansdale's stories and the kinds of things he writes. Hilarious, vivid, vulgar, poignant, profane, profound, colorful, and unforgettable. Not to mention unique. There's nothing else like them. High art and low comedy, sex and violence, humor and sadness, love and death, all in one package. Not a neat package, remember that, because it holds living, breathing people who lead often messy lives, people whose stories will keep you riveted while you read and who will stay with you long after you've closed the book, even if you try to forget them. And so that was nice for somebody to do that forward for Lansdale. And in turn, Lansdale had this nice thing to say about Critter. He writes all kinds of crime stories and non-crime stories. He wrote a horror series under a pen name and is also an accomplished short story writer and anthologist and retired professor at Alvin Community College. I think that's the name of the college. I think there are 3 chairs and a bar stool under a tree. Class is only in spring. So, Joe R. Lansdale in Nacogdoches, East Texas. Lots of novels. He's done some young adult novels, horror novels, crime novels. His Hap and Leonard series is very popular. We have a bunch of those on audio as well. And I'm Gerard Saylor of the LD Fargo Public Library in beautiful downtown Lake Mills, Wisconsin, and that's what's to read.